Ghost in the Air. I'm Jason Horton.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
And this is Ghost Town.
On May 25th, 1979, American Airlines Flight 191 took off on O'Hare International Airport's northwest runway, headed for Los Angeles, California. Most of the passengers on Flight 191 were on their way to a book convention and were excited to head west. But mere minutes after takeoff, something would go terribly wrong. Something that would kill hundreds of innocent people and forever label O'Hare International Airport as one of the most haunted airports in the world. Today, we're talking about Flight 191 and the haunted O'Hare International Airport. One of my favorite early Ghost Town episodes is, of course, the Denver airport, a strange, iconic place that has it all: conspiracies, death, a very shady history. O'Hare, similarly, is a huge hub of travel, and because of its popularity, it's literally the nation's busiest airport, flying more than 83 million passengers every year. I think it was under my radar, but no more, because an airport less than an hour and a half from my hometown, yes, Milwaukee, one that I've been flying in and out of for nearly 30 years, has its own horrifying history. The 7,600 acre airport started as a factory in 1942 for Douglas C-54 aircrafts to be used in World War II. After the conflict and the departure of Douglas, the aircraft's namesake, the field was renamed Orchard Field Airport after a nearby community called Orchard Place. That's why O'Hare's three-letter IATA code, short for International Air Transport Association code, is ORD and not like OHA or OHI. In 1945, Chicago decided to grow Orchard Field to become a fancy international airport. 4 years later, the airport was strangely renamed O'Hare International Airport after World War II naval aviator Edward Butch O'Hare, a man with his own tragic and complicated family history. Some might call it a bit of a father-son curse. On February 20th, 1942, St. Louis-born pilot Edward Butch O'Hare became the Navy's first fighter ace when he single-handedly, some say crazily, attacked a formation of 9 heavy bombers approaching his aircraft carrier. Even though he had a very limited amount of ammunition, Butch O'Hare was credited with shooting down 5 Japanese enemy bombers and became the first naval aviator recipient of the Medal of Honor for World War II. Unfortunately, nobody knows for sure what actually killed Butch O'Hare on the night of November 26, 1943. O'Hare had recently volunteered to lead a mission to conduct the first ever Navy nighttime fighter attack from an aircraft carrier to intercept a large force of enemy torpedo bombers. When the call finally came to man the fighters for this groundbreaking mission, O'Hare was eating. He grabbed up part of his dinner in his fist and started running for the ready room. Black Panthers, as the night fighters are now awkwardly dubbed, took off before dusk and flew out into the incoming mass of Japanese planes. The mission was fraught with confusion and complications, including trouble finding their targets, guiding fire to targets, and a high danger of friendly fire. The last known words of Butch O'Hare also reflected this confusion. He had just radioed the Avenger pilot of his section, saying, quote, "Hey Phil, turn those running lights on. I want to be sure it's a devil I'm drilling." I left out some more offensive parts of this quote, but you get the picture. O'Hare's plane lights went out, and at the same time, he veered off into the darkness and out of his fellow fighters' views. A pilot friend later recalled that, as O'Hare's plane dropped out of his sight, it seemed to release something that fell almost vertically at a speed too slow for anything but a parachute. Then something, quote, whitish-gray appeared below, perhaps the splash of the aircraft plunging into the sea. After that, no trace of O'Hare or his aircraft was ever found again. Oddly enough, Butch O'Hare would have never become a military pilot if it wasn't for his father, Edward O'Hare, called Easy Eddie, who was obsessed with flying and guns himself. Easy Eddie made his living first as a lawyer that represented Owen P. Smith, High Commissioner of the International Greyhound Racing Association. As a note, he's the guy who patented a mechanical running rabbit for use in dog racing, and then, much more famously, as Al Capone's lawyer. Unlike his son, Easy Eddie was a big-time gambler and loved being associated with important people. An avid dog racer, attorney, and asshole. As the story goes, one day in the 1920s, Edward O'Hare came home to find his son, Butch, sprawled on a couch reading books and eating banana layer cake and donuts. Edward decided that his boy was showing signs of laziness and enrolled him at Western Military Academy in Alton, Illinois, and Butch never looked back. But Butch O'Hare would only outlive his dad by a couple of years. In November 1939, Edward O'Hare was shot and killed, most likely by Al Capone's gunmen. During Capone's tax evasion trial in 1931 and 1932, Easy Eddie turned on the notorious mob boss, providing incriminating evidence that helped finally put Capone away. Less than 5 years later, Butch O'Hare would be dead, and on September 19, 1949, the Chicago area Orchard Depot Airport was renamed O'Hare International Airport. Then, O'Hare Airport grew. Chicago's other big airport, Midway, initially established itself as Chicago's airfield of choice. It lacked runways long enough to handle the larger, heavier planes of the dawning jet age. O'Hare underwent major expansions in the 1950s and 1960s and transformed into the sprawling airport we buy overpriced Dasanis in today. Which brings us back, to the future, but then steering us back to May 25th, 1979. It was a beautiful holiday weekend in Chicago. The sky was clear, blue, and sunny. The passengers of Flight 191, which included a number of Chicago literary figures, were headed for an even nicer place. They were on their way to Los Angeles for the annual American Booksellers Association conference. Everyone would say that the passengers and the crew of Flight 191 were in incredibly capable hands. Those of Walter Lux, an expert DC-10 pilot with some 22,000 hours of flight time, First Officer James Dillard, and Flight Engineer Alfred Udovich, who had nearly 25,000 flight hours between them. The plane itself had traveled 20,000 uneventful hours since it left the factory assembly line. Everyone on board settled in for an easy ride as the time crept towards 3 p.m. A minute before 3 p.m. on Friday, May 25th, the plane was cleared to begin its taxi to the runway's holding point. At 3:02 p.m., with everything ago, Flight 191 started takeoff. 6,000 feet down the runway, the tower controller saw parts of the port engine pylon falling away from the aircraft and a mysterious white vapor coming from the area. As a note, I didn't know this, a pylon is the part of the plane that connects the cylindrical engine to the airframe of the aircraft. It's that little joining piece. Air passes through the pylon to actively disrupt the jet engine exhaust stream after it exits the engine and dampens noise from the aircraft. In any case, a moment later, the plane pitched into rotation and lifted off. As it did, the entire white vapor-covered engine and pylon tore loose from the mounting, flipping up and over the wing and crashed down onto the runway. Immediately, the tower controller tried to raise the plane on the radio. American 191, do you want to come back? If so, what runway do you want? Pretty calm words for what horror was just witnessed. Despite the loss of the engine and pylon, the wings stabilized and Flight 191 continued its ascent. There was no reply to the tower controller from the crew, which also struck the controller. 10 seconds later, at a height of about 300 feet, the plane veered left, first slightly, then sharply. The nose of the plane fell, losing control. Flight 191 dove down hard. The left wingtip hit the ground first, and the sound of tearing metal was followed by a massive, deadly explosion. A gigantic fireball swept across the field, traveling about half a mile northwest of O'Hare and roaring into an abandoned airplane hangar just east of Deerfield Mobile Home Park. Thankfully, that was the extent of the plane's land-borne travel and damage. The plane barely missed fuel storage tanks on Elmhurst Road and the crowded I-90 expressway. At the time, a man named Mac McCall was shift operations supervisor at O'Hare. It was on his shift that this tragedy occurred. He reflects on the crash, saying, quote, I was on the field at the time when I heard a maintenance person say, Mayday, Mayday, on the radio. I could see smoke coming up. The O'Hare Fire Department was dispatched and I went out with him on the site. The wind was blowing from west to east and I almost choked on it as we reached the spot. I was looking for an airplane, but I couldn't see it anywhere. It had just melted. All 271 passengers and crew members were killed instantly, along with 2 residents of the nearby trailer park, resulting in the deadliest air disaster in American history. Let's let that sink in as we take a break.
Hey there, campers. My name's Kimmy.
And my name's Ryan.
We've noticed you stumbled upon our mystical campfire, so that means there's a solid chance you have some questions. Like,
why am I here? What's going on? And why are there cryptid and folklore creatures everywhere? And should I be worried about the Mothman dressed as a camp counselor swooping down to steal my s'mores?
well, you've stumbled upon the Alluring Campgrounds. Alluring is a folklore podcast where every episode we dive into the history and lore of different creatures and cryptids you see wandering around these campgrounds.
And during each episode, we discuss the sightings, encounters, poems, history, fun, facts, and pop culture focused on our campfire topic that week. We hope through shared experience we can learn and make light about all the unknown corners of the universe.
So come take a seat around the campfire, make yourself at home, and listen to Alluring Today anywhere podcasts are heard. Or watch videos on YouTube, or even go to our website, alluring.com. That's ALOREING.com.
Hurry into Mattress Firm's best Memorial Day sale ever. Get a king bed for the price of a queen or a queen for a twin and save up to $500 on Sealy. Plus, get a free adjustable base with qualifying Sealy purchases up to a $499 value. Or shop Tempur-Pedic, the most highly recommended bed in America, and save up to $500 on adjustable mattress sets in stock for immediate delivery. And get a $300 instant gift. Talk to a sleep expert today, only at Mattress Firm. Restrictions apply. See store or mattressfirm.com for details.
Hey there, it's Brett Bassick
and Toddy Smith.
We're the hosts of the Good Boys podcast.
As a YouTuber and a model,
and a music executive and startup CEO,
we have collected some unbelievable stories and life lessons.
And we want to share them with you.
Each week on the Good Boys podcast, we're going to have incredible guests from all types of entertainment.
They'll be sharing their most hilarious, stressful, and life-changing moments.
In a time of constant content creation and pressure to always be on to bigger and better things,
we're here to take a moment to slow down and reflect back on some amazing times with you.
So please tune in each Tuesday to the Good Boys for free.
And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss out on a good boy time.
Hi, hello, how are you?
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm taking a deep breath and letting it out. What do you care?
I wasn't talking to you. I was checking in with the people.
Oh, okay.
I want to know what the people are doing and how they're doing and how they're feeling. What they're eating.
Well,
what are you eating?
What is it then?
Are you
I don't
having
hear
Cheesecake
anyone.
Factory? What's going on?
Breadsticks, bread knots, rolls, a baked potato?
Are you eating a salad?
Oh, say it ain't so.
Let us have this. Let us pretend you're eating a Cheesecake Factory. Want to say hello to anyone who's listening and sharing and spreading the good word. Share it with a neighbor.
Yeah.
They're just like, can I have my lawnmower back? It's like, no, but how about check out this episode of Ghost Town?
That's good.
They're
That's
like,
good.
I can't mow my lawn with that. And I
It's
was like,
better
no.
than a lawnmower. Ghost Town.
What's better than a lawnmower and Ghost Town?
Uh-oh.
The government. Right?
Yeah.
Say it with me.
Okay. I'm with you.
How about a couple of foxy mayors
Oh, okay.
slinking in?
The lighting's so good right now, too.
James Harrington,
Hello?
Kat Joselle,
Hello?
David Bull,
Ooh.
Ashley Matson,
Hi.
Dara Rosenzweig,
Hello.
and one elevated on just coming up in the concert's coming up and it's like elevated platform.
Oh, yeah, the smoke is rising.
It's wind and
Ooh,
smoke.
The sexiest
and
one of them all.
Just everything is just there's muscle men and bikini girls in equal amount.
Exercise video?
An equal amount. Maybe it is an exercise video. I don't know. Turn it into whatever you want.
All right.
The one and only governor,
Avian Noble.
So if you want bonus episodes, advanced early access, no chit chat, no ads, but content. I was going to say no content. That made sense to me. But plus content.
Plus content.
Go to patreon.com/ghosttownpod.
All right. Let's get back to Chicago, where the city, the country, and the world are shocked. They have just processed this horrific tragedy and couldn't quite understand how this even happened. Everything pointed to a successful flight. An investigation commenced into the flawed maintenance methods leading to the crash of the very capable DC-10. Less popular, however, as the investigation was going on, were the questions of people at a nearby housing community in the northwest corners of Chicago. Multiple residents of this space, again, it was adjacent to this mobile home park, reported knocking at their doors and windows. Residents who responded, among them a number of retirees and off-duty police officers and firefighters, found no sign of visitors. This knocking, this disturbance, would continue over and over again through the next several weeks and into present day. Thankfully, the flight information was readily available to identify the victims of the crash, as local forensic dentists called to the scene reported difficulty in identifying the bodies. Because of the intense heat of the fuel, there were no remains really for them to examine. Everything and everyone had been almost completely vaporized. On December 21st, 1979, the findings of a long and grueling investigation were released, attributing the cause of the crash to an engine pylon that had been damaged at an American Airlines maintenance facility in March of 1979. The engine had needed routine maintenance, and to save time and costs, American Airlines, without the approval of McDonnell Douglas, told mechanics to remove the engine and pylon as a single unit, instead of detaching them and servicing them separately. This time and money-saving ask was extremely difficult to execute, nearly impossible without creating a crack. And guess what? It created a crack. The crack likely went unnoticed for weeks, getting worse with each flight. During Flight 191's fateful takeoff, enough force was generated to finally cause the pylon to fail. At the point of rotation, the engine detached and was flipped over the top of the wing. One small, unnoticed fracture had ended almost 300 lives. Also, after the report of Flight 191's crack in its pylon, another investigation was launched to see if this had happened in other planes. Sure enough, it had. Many other cracks and fractures were found in other DC-10s that came out of the same factory. With an answer as to why this happened, Flight 191's crash site was finally cleared, and Chicago's northwest side felt a little bit calmer. Or did it? As mentioned, the hauntings around Flight 191 started mere hours after the crash, but have continued up until this day. A few figures still haunt the crash scene, lingering in the form of knocks, wails, and moans. Some local residents have passed someone on the road they call the Steaming Man, an annoyed businessman in a suit and trench coat who walks quickly down the road. While that maybe doesn't seem that unusual for an airport-adjacent road, the Steaming Man smells of jet fuel and has waves of steam emanating from him. Speaking of road sightings, according to Des Plaines police officers, motorists began reporting odd sights within a few months of the crash. They had seen strange, bobbing white lights and activity in the field where the flight went down. Their first thoughts were that it was flashlights by ghost hunters, but officers responded to the reports, quickly arrived to a silent, deserted field. Local cemeteries called Rest Haven and St. Johannes were moved closer to the crash site from the local airport to make way for a new runway. Mourners at the cemetery's new locations report whispers, sounds, and feeling touched on their shoulders and arms. Inside the airport itself, inside O'Hare, sightings of at least one of 191's passenger remains, forever retracing his final hours before boarding the DC-10. For the past 20 years, at a payphone near the terminal's lounge, passengers at O'Hare have watched a somber male figure wrap up a last-minute conversation, turn expectantly toward the American 191 gate, take a few steps, and then completely disappear. Then there were the accounts from the residents of the nearby Deerfield Mobile Home Park, and then the subdivision next to it, which again was adjacent to the crash site. Like I mentioned earlier, reports came within hours of the crash of knocking at their doors and windows, and the knocking started to escalate to a point that doorknobs were being turned and rattled. Footsteps were heard approaching the trailers, clanging was heard on the metal stairs, and on some occasions, actual forms were seen, unmistakable forms. Specifically, a worried figure who stated that he, quote, had to get his luggage, or, quote, had to make a connection, standing at a mobile home porch. The figure then turned and completely vanished. These traumatic sightings caused many of the residents to move out of the park, but then new people moved in years after, and they would report the same strange yet consistent happenings. Seeing the Steaming Man, crying, screaming, moaning, various sounds of the souls of Flight 191, along with shadows, floating orbs, and flying phantom aircrafts, are all reported events by the residents of the mobile home park flanking the crash site. And humans weren't the only witnesses to unexplained events. Dogs in the trailer park would bark endlessly at the empty field where the plane had gone down, owners finding no reason for their behavior. And next to the mobile home park, again close to where the crash took place, there's currently a Chicago police canine training facility. Dogs at the facility act strangely, sometimes sensing figures where humans don't, and acting confused and scared where there would be no reason to feel that way. There is a memorial for Flight 191 at Lake Park in Des Plaines, Illinois, with a brick for every one of the passengers and crew members who died. Of course, there is the deep psychological damage of those who actually lived through the event, too. Let's get back to Mac McCall, the shift operations supervisor. McCall and hundreds of airport and American Airlines employees had horrible trauma from witnessing Flight 191 go down. An airline employee who was involved in the maintenance of the plane, but who had no direct connection with the work done on it before its fateful takeoff from O'Hare, took his own life in Oklahoma. His wife, speaking with the press, said the man was distraught about what he had seen. Back then, people didn't know about post-traumatic stress syndrome, McCall continued. You just toughed it out. I still think about it, though. Every time I hear about a tragic incident like a school shooting, I think about it. McCall, amazingly, was witness to another air disaster 10 years later when a United Airlines plane en route from Denver to O'Hare crashed in a fireball while attempting to make an emergency landing in Sioux City, Iowa. Of the more than 200 passengers on the aircraft, more than 100 died. The survivors were later flown from Sioux City to O'Hare, where McCall, as operations supervisor, was responsible for coordinating people at the gate. Quote, some of the people who had been on the plane that crashed were in good shape, others were beat up, he explained. He said that looking into the eyes of the victims was absolutely devastating. I think it's hard to think about these things because I think of air travel as being very safe, so we forget some of the tragedies surrounding the industry. But the history, the loss of life, the hauntings, and the testimonials on episodes like these can make it all the more vivid, chilling, and real.
Searching for the loan that's right for your life or your business? The Bank of Clark County offers personal auto financing, personal loans and business lines of credit, mortgages and business real estate loans, home equity loans, personal and business construction loans, and more. Whether you're looking to upgrade your life or your business, the Bank of Clark County has the loan that fits. Visit your local Bank of Clark County branch or go to bankofclark.bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more, and Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.